show is sponsored by PowerfulWomenUSA.com, a place to be inspired by successful women. Hey everybody, I'm Jill Conway, and this is Secrets of Powerful Women, a show dedicated to celebrating and supporting strong and successful women and sharing their stories. So I'm hoping you will be inspired to pursue your dreams, feel empowered, reclaim your voice, and discover your strengths. My guest today is Dr. Sima Mofakham. She is a neuroscientist and the director of research of Neurological Surgery at Stony Brook University. Sima, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Sima, I need you to speak in layman's terms because you're a brilliant woman. So what exactly, we'll start with your work.
Yes.
What exactly do you do on a day-to-day basis? What's your job?
Yeah, that's not so simple, actually.
You study the brain, right? And traumatic brain injuries.
Yes. So maybe I give you a little bit of background about me.
Okay.
And maybe that's like easier to understand.
Okay.
So I'm a computational neuroscientist, meaning that my PhD training was to study how two neural networks, they interact with each other, basically how brain cells, they interact with each other, and what are the characteristics of these interactions in healthy and pathological cases.
Okay.
Now, at the Stony Brook, I have my own lab. And what we do, we study traumatic brain injury and consciousness and cognition. Basically, we are studying how consciousness and cognition arises from activity of individual cells and networks in the brain.
Wow. Like the master control system, right? So I know there's all different levels, right, of traumatic brain injuries. So at what point... A traumatic brain injury, which I learned, there's a big difference between traumatic brain injuries and then brain injuries, right? Like traumatic is the way it happened. Is that true?
So traumatic brain injury can be defined as external insult that is happened to the brain.
Okay.
These insults result in loss of consciousness.
Okay.
At the Stony Brook, we receive 60 to 80 of these cases every year.
Wow.
And
from what would you say, like car accidents or something?
So most of these patients, they come to hospital after falling. Falling is the number one reason.
Wow.
And the number two is car accident.
Wow.
Yeah.
I read that in one of the studies said every 9 seconds, someone in the U.S. sustains a brain injury. That's according to the Brain Injury Association.
It is a very bad problem. It's a very bad health problem. And in the United States, we have more than 200,000 patients that every year sustain traumatic brain injury. That's a lot of people. And what happens is they lose consciousness. And when they are in this unconscious state, our data shows that most of these patients recover consciousness in 10 days, but some of them takes weeks and months. And during this waiting time, you can imagine what happens to the families. Like they don't know if their loved one is going to recover or not. They don't know like
that's scary, yeah.
What they should do, medical decisions. These are hard decisions to make. Doctors, they don't know if the patient is recovering or not. So what we are trying to do in the lab is to make new devices and new measures to actually help doctors and to see if these patients are going to, recover consciousness or not. So basically adding additional layer of information for doctors. So give them like a second eye.
Right. So when people come in, and obviously there's been an accident, right? So you see them at what stage? Right away, almost right away, or after after they've been evaluated?
So our lab has. So let me tell you the structure of the lab. We have medical students and PhD students. So medical students, when we have these patients, they are notified that these patients are here and after a day or two, they try to reach out to the families and see if they are willing to enroll in our studies. Because these are research studies, so we have to get a consent from the family members. But on average, a couple of days it takes us to enroll these patients.
Right. So you said the average time that they're in their own, I should say, brain coma. It's their own, it's not a medically induced coma, right? I mean, when they're at that point. Yes. So what's the difference? So, I mean, what's the difference? Is there a difference between the time, like how long? Let's say you guys put sometimes, I don't know if you, but put people in a medically induced coma.
So the biggest difference is that's reversible, right? Because your medication, it's controlled by medication. But loss of consciousness after brain injury is something that, we have no control over.
Right.
And there has been cases that they've been in the coma for years.
Right.
And they, at some point, very rare, but there was a couple of cases that they, started doing command following. So we basically measure the recovery of consciousness in clinical setting by command following, basically asking the patients, open your eye, make a smile, and try to see if they're doing it.
With them still in the coma? So
yes, so this is how the clinicians measure. So they're basically systematic way of measuring the recovery of consciousness. They are based on a scoring system. So basically, you try to assess if the patients in following command or have arousal by asking a series of questions and trying to assess the level of consciousness. For example, open your eye.
Right.
Or see if the patient's eyes are open or they can open it by a stimulation or they are responsive to pain. So all these examination you do to try to see, to give them a score. And based on that score to see how conscious they are or what's their outcome going to be. But as I said, these are very subjective currently. So it's all based on evaluation of the person that is doing it. So what we are trying to do in the lab is to make that more objective measure of consciousness.
So you're saying, I remember years ago, people were thinking when someone was in a coma that maybe they couldn't hear anything, right? But now we've come so far, and many, how many out of 10, let's say, how many people in comas can hear outside people? Most people can, do you think? Or you have to monitor their brain activity at that point?
So this is a very good question. And there was a recent paper in New England Journal of Medicine that was reflected also on New York Times and got a lot of attention because what they did, this relatively large scale study, 500 something.
That's large.
Yeah, comatose patients at multiple institutions. They looked at their brain activity, their EEG, and their neuroimaging activity, while they were asking questions. And the authors figured that 25% of patients that we think they are in coma and they don't understand what's going on around them.
Right, they're deep.
But they are actually, they have covert consciousness.
Covert?
Yeah.
And what's that?
So they understand, but they cannot move.
They can't react. Yeah. Wow.
So we, by mistake, classify them as unresponsive, but actually, which creates a lot of problem because ethical problem, care management problems. So what we are trying to develop new techniques to basically avoid something like this happen,
right.
and probably have a better understanding of the stage of the coma that these patients are,
right.
and if they actually understand us.
So, when someone suffers from a traumatic brain injury, it is traumatic to them, and to their caregivers. What exactly happens in the brain? Is it it shakes? There's like my son had a concussion many years ago, and he hit his head very, very hard. He was out of school for an entire school year, and it was the series of. At the time, people don't take it was a very bad concussion. People don't take it seriously. Coaches don't take it serious. They're starting to, right? Football, we're starting to see them, take this seriously. But he was he couldn't leave his room. He couldn't get up.
So
he would be throwing up. The dizziness, the lights, really, it was a horrible experience. And we didn't know how bad concussions were, right?
Yeah.
Until we lived it. So Mike, and someone said to me, the doctor, and they were a great team of doctors, said, it's like the brain gets shooken up, and then it's like almost like a film or fluid covers it. Is that that's the same type of thing concussions are minor, less, not as traumatic. Yeah. So is that what happens too?
So traumatic brain injury is very heterogeneous, meaning that patient by patient is different. Depending on the type of the injury, how the insult, the impact, the strength. But normally it has, you lose a bunch of cells. Some cells, they're dead, and you lose axonal, like a lot of connections are damaged. But what we found is that there are some part of brain that they're very critical for recovery of consciousness. We found that if the injuries are extended into the thalamus of the brain, the chances of recovery decreases. And we have a model that how thalamus coordinates activity of cortical cells, which is this outer layer of the brain that we think that does a lot of abstract thinking and computations for the brain. But when this almond size piece called thalamus inside the brain, the connections from thalamus are injured to the cortex, then the recovery is much harder.
Right.
We have a couple of publications that shows that.
And we've always believed, I've read, I can't say I've always believed, but I question everything now, and I think the science is constantly changing as you guys and all the medical profession keeps doing more and more studies on things that we've never studied before. So, how long can you be in a coma? Or what have you seen or read that you can be in a coma and then come out and be okay? A patient. I know it's individual, right? But what's the longest that maybe you've heard about?
So there was this paper that Dr. Nico Schiff published in Nature 2007 that they studied a patient who was years in coma, I think.
Wow.
5 years, I don't remember exactly how many years, and then they started the thalamic stimulation. Oh. And with using thalamic stimulation, the patient got some behavioral recovery. He could follow command. But these are very rare cases.
Right.
That's something that we are also in the lab. Our lab is, we are trying to see if thalamic stimulation would help these patients to recover consciousness. We haven't done it yet, but this is some of, based on our model, it should be helpful if these patients get some sort of thalamic stimulation. Those that, they have a specific injury in their brain circuitry, they can benefit from that.
So I also read there was something like fiber-optic treatments. What is that for? That is a remarkable, because we hear fiber optics, we hear that for our cable, our cable stations and connections. But is that something that is being studied in how that works with the brain or something like that? Some kind of...
I mean, there are many studies that, they're studying the neuroplasticity. I don't know if you're referring to that for basically repairing these connections. But what we're more focused on is to create closed loop stimulation system that induce plasticity in neural.
Meaning what? That's a big word.
Plasticity.
Yeah.
So brain is has plasticity, meaning that you can change it. It's not that, it's not set. That's why they say, try to work out, eat well, learn every day to basically, improve your brain.
Reprogram your brain almost.
Yeah. It's not that something that you cannot change. It's,
wow.
Yeah. So
wow.
We can get smarter every day, by doing things learning new things.
Which is so interesting because some people say like, I'll never change. I have a bad memory. I'll never be able to remember that. I'll never. And it's not true. It's not true.
So.
Oh my gosh. It's amazing. All right. So talk about maybe some of the things you are working on. I know, but
yes,
there's a lot of amazing things that you guys are working on at Stony Brook. So tell us, one or two things. We have 4 minutes before the break, and I know you go into detail, but what are some of the exciting things that you've seen?
So one of the exciting things that we are working that is related to the conversation that we have is creating a new measure which is objective for detecting the level of consciousness. This measure is called CME, and basically uses computer vision and sensors that they have much higher resolution than human naked eye that can actually make these neurological exams that they're done on these patients in an objective manner rather than the subjective scoring system that right now people use. That can has the potential to revolutionize how these neurological exams are done.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you're doing these these in the lab and you're trying to figure out, all these patients, right? You're, really researching what's going on with them. What kind of like things maybe do you do? Do you like you said, you talk to them and can you move? Do you like touch their feet or their toes and see what?
Yeah. So what happens is our team enroll these patients after consenting from family,
of course,
and videotape these patients. And we have sensors on their body also. Okay. And these are also can be connected to their brain activity, their EEG. And when you are asking questions, rather than just relying on the naked eyes, we are looking to see AI and machine learning techniques analyzing these videos if they can find patterns that these patients are trying to communicate with us. Wow. And they're trying to follow these commands, but we are missing them. So we have done that right now in 50 patients. We enrolled 50 patients, around 50. And what we noticed, we can see the recovery of consciousness 4 to 8 days earlier than doctors.
Wow.
And any doctors listening to this, they know that 4 to 8 days, maybe it doesn't sound long to us, but for doctors and family members that they are in this uncertain state, that's a big deal.
So you can, through your studies and you can see that there is brain activity and that they're trying to communicate way before they do. Yes. I think that's incredible.
Yes.
Wow.
So we both look at the brain activity or EEG, that basically there are contacts on the brain. And also we analyze the facial movements, the hidden facial movements.
The hidden facial. What's the hidden facial movement?
So those that are basically you cannot see by naked eye.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Like what? Like what would that be, for an example?
So we have it, so to just make it more clear, we have a paper that is published a year ago that we tried this technique on just normal patients, control, subjects, to see if we can detect hidden facial movements. So
go ahead. We have 45 seconds. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. So we showed these subjects, healthy subjects like you and I, like sad triggering and happy triggering pictures.
Yeah.
And what we found, and we told them, don't react, just, be like, try to don't have any reactions. And then we analyzed their faces, and we could detect which basically, if we were showing them happy triggering feeling or sad feeling, we found the patterns of face. But if I show you their pictures, just looking at their faces, you cannot tell.
Oh my goodness!
But when we show, you look at the
you can see
these hidden patterns that these machine learning and AI.
I'm gonna cut you there. Oh my gosh, Dr. Sima Mofakham. She'll more after the commercial break. You're listening to Secrets of Powerful Women. Welcome back. You're listening to Secrets of Powerful Women. Dr. Sima Mofakham is here with me. She is a neuroscientist and director of the research of neurological surgery at Stony Brook University Hospital. Dr. Sima, what we're talking about is so fascinating, and all the work that you do with traumatic brain injuries and the studying of how the brain responds and what's going on when someone's unconscious. But I want to talk about, we'll get back to all those things, and I know you're working with on AVM awareness. But let's talk about you for a second. And you grew up where? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Tehran, the capital of Iran, in mid-'80s. And when I'll tell you my story.
Go ahead.
So every one of us is basically given a hand when you're born, right? Your genetics, where you're born, your family, your socioeconomic class. Mine was, I was born in Tehran, Iran, and an educated family in mid-'80s and in middle of Iran-Iraq war. So, so it was a strange time back then. It was my childhood. I have memories of my childhood, these airstrikes, and we had to run to basement and, hearing my parents whispering that this neighbor house got bombed. It was a strange time, but I guess what it gave me, it was resilience. But other than that, I have a good childhood. I always questioned everything. My favorite game was chess. I always played chess. I started playing chess when I was 4 or 5, and I became very good at it. And I could all the, everyone that I played with, I mostly won. And I think that gave me a confidence for that, okay, you're not any less than any boy, you're smart. So when I was 5, I basically reached the conclusion that, there's no difference between the intelligence level of girls and boys. Question everything. Everything is possible. Don't believe in anything that you cannot find any reasoning for it. And if you want to change the world, become an electrical engineer.
So that's what you did? You decided?
No. That was my 5-year-old, because I was thinking, what should I do in the future? And I was like, okay, Sima, anything that you see around you now can be replaced by a robot in future.
That's true. Well, you're a brilliant 5-year-old. My goodness. All right, go ahead.
No, this was but
as you get older, yeah.
No, actually, I was 5, 6 years old. I was like, anything you see, it can be replaced. But who makes the robots? Electrical engineers. Yeah. So if you want to change the future, become an electrical engineer. And then I grew up, I went to school. I had, my first grade wasn't easy. And, in contrast with all other kids, that the first grade is the easy. But because I would get bored very easily. Then normally in first grade, they read you a text and they want you to write. And I would just write some and then I start drawing. So I wasn't paying attention in the classroom.
You were being engaged, really, right?
No. And then the second grade, that was when I actually shined, because the math classes started and I was very better than other students in math. So that was like, then my friends were, oh, so you're not stupid.
So then what did you eventually go into? Because
so when I went to high school and I had to decide what major I want, I decided if I want to understand how the world works, I should study physics. So I did nuclear physics.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I did nuclear physics and then a bachelor in condensed matter physics. And then I want to do my PhD, so I came to States.
All by yourself or with family? Or
No, just me.
Wow, brave.
Yeah. So I left and I came on a single entrance visa, meaning that I couldn't go back. So I came here by myself, new country, new language, new culture, no friends.
That's hard.
That was hard.
Yeah.
That was like...
And you were 18 around there, or how old were you?
It was early 20s.
Oh, okay.
Early 20s. No, after I did my bachelor.
Yeah.
And so I did my PhD at the University of Michigan.
Oh, great.
So after studying physics, nuclear physics and condensed matter physics, I was like, these are all great, but I want to actually do something to help, human. Like, what should I do? And I was getting more and more interested in biology and medicine. And at Ann Arbor, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I studied, University of Michigan, Dr. Michal Zachovsky, my PhD advisor, he had a lab and he studied complex systems. And what's the most complex system you can study? It's the brain, because it's made of millions and billions of neurons and connections, and it's just the level of complexity of the brain, like nothing matches that. So during my PhD, I modeled individual cells and how the interactions with other cells and how networks, basically the dynamics in the healthy case and in disease states. I was studying like what type of, what conditions result in epilepsy and seizures. Wow. And how can we predict that? Right. What are the statistical measures to predict seizures? But this was all in computer. It was all in models. Right. And then I was like, after finishing my PhD, I was like, this is all great, but I want something more tangible. Right. And I did a postdoc at NYU where I analyzed the data from rat model, mice models. And basically, at NYU, I made a model, the first model, that how thalamus, these like almond size thing deep in the brain, can control the connectivity of cortex. And basically, and after that, I was recruited to Stony Brook, and now I knew how thalamus is important, and I came to Stony Brook. I met with Dr. Michael, that is a neurosurgeon there, and he was studying traumatic brain injury. I'm like, I think we can work together. I think I know like what's wrong. Like, maybe my model prediction is right. If we activate this trajectory between thalamus and cortex, maybe we can, help some of these patients wake up. And then we started the lab. So I wanted to get closer and closer to impacting human lives in a more positive way. So that's how, from an electrical engineer, now I have a neuroscience lab.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what I'm hearing is that you are a woman who doesn't tell herself it can't be done.
No.
What is your mindset? What's your philosophy on life? You touched a little bit in there, but when people say, no, we can't do that, or, what goes through your mind?
Yeah. I don't take a no for answers. Definitely not.
I love that.
I think everything is possible in this world. Anything you want is possible. And I never follow any basically pre-made algorithm that, okay, you're a woman, your life should look like this, your capacity is this much, you know, there are certain things you cannot do. I never followed that. Yeah.
Let me ask you something. Well, as you studied the brain and you people on, you know, who are unconscious, would you say, because I'm reading so much about it, that, you know, just the basic feeling that, you know, your thoughts can control your life, like your thoughts can, positive feelings and all that can really create a better life. What do you think?
Okay, so I'm going to give you a scientific answer based on the science we have done.
Yeah.
What we found in studying comatose patients is, so we are looking at the electrophysiological activity of the brain in these patients using these contacts that they have on their brain. Now we have EEG and sometimes ECOG. Okay. What we found is predictability of these recordings, these brain signals, is a bad thing. So
go ahead.
Let me explain it.
Yeah.
So if you can predict the activity of a patient, brain patient, so use machine learning AI to try to predict it. If you can actually predict it perfectly, it means they're bad. The more conscious they are, the more unpredictable the activity looks like.
Oh, okay. So
a conscious brain is an unpredictable brain.
Okay. So you can, in other words, you can create whatever you want. You can become anyone you want just by...
Yeah, don't be trapped in patterns and be predictable. That means that you're not using your full consciousness.
Oh, wow.
You're not using your full capacity.
So this whole thing, you know, when people talk positive thinking doesn't work and your thoughts don't create your life and things like that, I mean, I don't buy it because I think there's a direct relationship, you know, between your brain, your feelings, and your thoughts. And
so if I want to put it in a like more scientific framework is, so what do we do when we positive think? Positive thinking maybe remove you from that attractor state that you are in, that you don't see any solution. Maybe allows you to explore other options, other solutions to the problem you have. Maybe, you know, it just lift your brain a little bit, like, you know, you're not tracking this, we call it attractor, which is this like a state that you go back to, in this hole that, you know,
routine.
Yeah, you can get out of it. What I tell my students in daily life, I tell them always use a combination of zoom in and zoom out a strategy.
Meaning?
That when you're doing something, you know, I know you have to zoom in, you have to be like paying attention details, but, you know, once in a while, just zoom out. See the bigger picture, see like why things that you are doing, like, you know, make any sense or not. Don't
be conscious of what you're presently doing, of your...
Yeah, be conscious of it at two levels.
Yeah.
Both at, you know, like when you're doing it, and then from the bigger picture, like why I'm doing this.
Right.
And I feel flexibility and curiosity are the biggest two characteristics that you can have that helps you for success, being successful. It's not intelligence. It's how flexible, how dynamically you can change your mindset given the new evidence.
But yet you said too, a little while ago, you said that you can get smarter. Like, and it seems such a silly question, as I say it, like you can get smarter if you read and learn, but like some people, you know, may think they can. Like they could read 100 books and they're like, I'm just not smart, I'll never get it. But that's not.
No.
You reprogram. You just reprogram.
I believe that human potential is something that, you know, we don't max.
Yeah.
And we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you compare us to machines and computers, yeah, there are things that computer can do better than us. If I play chess with a computer, probably the computer, depending on the level.
Right.
But if it's good level, the computer win. But computer doesn't have consciousness.
Right.
It has intelligence. It doesn't have consciousness. And only humans have consciousness, which is the big difference between us and AI and computers.
And so talk about, I know you wanted, we could talk about quick, AI and the role that it's growing in your studies, in your lab, I'm sure, and in the world, right? So do you see that as having a major effect on your work, on your studies?
Yes, definitely. So AI and machine learning, they are new tools for basically optimizing the ways that we were doing things. And, going back to my dream of, you can have a robot for anything, like you can right now. It's not a dream anymore, actually. Right. And you can, have these different algorithms, and you optimize them using these, and you can do things that they're not possible. They're not possibility before. AI can read films, it can read images,
But do you think could replace humans in that way?
I think it goes back to consciousness, because they are not conscious. Right. They are intelligent, more intelligent than us at some topics maybe. Right. But at the end of the day, they are not conscious. Now, do they need to be conscious to take over the world? No. Right. But
that's where we have to stop them. That's where we have to put the brakes on them. I wanted to talk about you doing work with AVMs and the Paige Keeley Foundation.
Yes.
Because for people that don't know, Paige Keeley is a young 6-year-old, I believe, and she passed away suddenly in St. James, New York, and she suffered an AVM. So can you talk about that and what you're
unfortunately, we are very fortunate to collaborate with Keeley Foundation. I'm always inspired with these powerful women. So a collaboration between Paige Keeley and Stony Brook.
Paige Keeley Foundation,
Paige Keeley Foundation, and our lab. We made a fellowship under her name, Paige Elizabeth Keeley, to study AVMs. AVMs are rare and hard to study, so we are basically looking at past 20 years of our study, our patients basically, and study like what happens, like what their criteria was. We also are building like a 3D models of AVMs and trying to study how basically under what conditions these AVMs, which are basically abnormal connectivity between veins and arteries, they burst and bleed, and because what you want to do is not get there basically,
discover earlier
because
it's really undetectable to the human eye. Obviously, you don't know if anyone sitting next to you has it, or is a child.
And it's something you are born with, and so we are trying to basically study and see if there's any way we can detect them earlier, or we can, analyze and see like what are the conditions that result in the burst of these AVMs.
Amazing.
So these fellowships support 2 years of a postdoctoral work, and we hired Dr. Marcella Gilly, who started a couple of months ago, and he's working at this project.
Oh, that's wonderful. I hope you can come up with some answers, right? All right. So, but I do want to ask you, we have about a little over 2 minutes left. So you were described your tough childhood, and
Yes.
and you look back at it and say I had a great childhood because that's all you knew, right? So to women and young ladies out there, or women of all ages who say, I came from a tough I came from a tough background. I can't do it. I can't. I'm struggling to get ahead. Well, what advice would you give them?
Things that work for me is, first of all, have an open mind, be flexible every day, start with a smile, look people in the eye, do your workout, dress nice. It doesn't have to be expensive, but try to dress nice just because it makes you feel better. Try to work out, try to study, try to take no for answer, and just try to identify what you really like. When you know what you really like, you can get there.
Do you journal? Do you ever journal or write down your thoughts?
I should. I'm not that good at it.
What about meditating? Do you take that quiet time ever?
For me, working out is a meditation. I try to do an hour a day, which is like, that's my meditation.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. It's that walking, running meditation where you just are alone with your thoughts and kind of just...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
I think those are powerful.
Yeah. And, write down things that you want.
All right. Oh, gosh. A big thank you. We have 30 seconds left, but a big thank you to Dr. Sima Mofakham for coming on the show. She's an amazing neuroscientist and the director of research of neurological surgery at Stony Brook University Hospital. You have been listening to Secrets of Powerful Women. Head to Powerful Women USA to get on the newsletter, listen to previous shows, or find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm Jill Conway, and thank you for listening to the show celebrating incredible women. I hope you are inspired to pursue your goals, believe in yourself, and dream bigger. I'm here to remind you that your voice matters and that your story has power to help others. I hope you join me next time.